This is Lisa from MobileTechReview, and now for something a little bit different, though it's something that's been around for several years. Oh, that's confusing, right? This is the Gigabyte Aero 16 for 2022. Now, when I say it's been around for a while, I mean Gigabyte Aero has been around for several years, and at first it was marketed as a gaming laptop. Now they're repurposing it as a creator / you can also game with it laptop. And that's a space that I like to see competition. We can't have it just be Razer Blade, right? Or the 16-inch MacBook Pro for those who are not so gaming centric, that sort of stuff. So we have a couple of things that people are going to really like here. Besides the Intel 12th generation Core i7 14-core CPU, you can also get with the Core i9. We have NVIDIA RTX graphics. We have the 3070 Ti inside. You can also get a 3080 Ti or a 3060 if you're on a budget. So those things, okay, those are nice. You expect them for 2022, right? But we have a 16:10 aspect ratio, 16-inch 4K plus OLED display, which is lovely. It's to die for. Whether you're creating or whether you're gaming or just watching a movie, you're going to love it. We're going to look at it now. Now, one of the reasons we like competition is it can help with pricing in this typically expensive space. So the model that we have with the Core i7, the 3070 Ti, 16 gigs of RAM, and a terabyte PCIe Gen 4 SSD, and the 4K plus OLED display is $2,350 at Best Buy. Right now it's on sale for $2,200. So for what you're getting here, that's not too bad. And when you look at something like the Razer Blade, which in a similar configuration, but no 4K plus OLED display, you're looking at almost $3,000. And you're like, oh, this is looking good. Of course, M1 16-inch MacBook Pros are pretty pricey too, and I'll talk a little bit more about that oddball kind of comparison. And there's also the MSI Stealth, of course, too, which is actually a little bit more expensive. So nice to see that. So it's all sounding like great. You should buy this thing, right? It weighs 5 pounds, which is about 2.3 kilograms, which is in the thin and light category. Certainly, it's a lot of performance for the carry. Not too thick, not ungodly skinny, but that's fine with me because you want room for cooling for something this powerful. One of the drawbacks is, well, the plus is you get 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports plus a USB-C 3.2 Gen 2, a headphone jack, and that's it on the body. Those grill vents on the side that look awfully like USB-A ports, do not stick USB-A plugs into those because they're not. Now Gigabyte does include their little hub here, and it's a pretty decent hub, HDMI, mini display port, a USB-A, and Ethernet on board. It's a little flippy flappy if you mount it directly to the side. They give you a little shorty cable so you don't have to deal with the flippy flappy if you don't want. It comes with a case that does not fit the cable as well. Oh well. So anyway, it's a bit port constrained. And if you're aiming at this at creators, I think particularly, I'd like to see some USB-A ports. I use a myriad portable hard drives, for example, for storing video and photos on, and if it's archiving stuff, I don't even need fast ones, so they're typically spinning platter 2.5-inch USB-A drives. Well, gonna need an adapter, and for all sorts of other things. So there's that. What can you do? Well, especially since you get the hub in the box, so I'm not saying that this would stop me from buying the laptop. So the next thing you're going to wonder about, well, is how is it doing in terms of thermals, especially when they start gravitating over marketing it to creators versus gamers, right? That might be a tell. Actually, they do a very good job. Now, to keep in mind here is that the GPUs, regardless of which of those three you choose, they're 105 watt maximum. So basically max Q territory. So don't expect it to be something like the MSI GE76 Razer 17-inch desktop replacement that we reviewed, because that's a different class of machine, and that does go up to 165, 175 watts, right? So I thought, okay, it's not going to be primo in gaming. No, I can be okay with max Q in a portable kind of form factor. This thing actually does pretty well, and the cooling is better than I expected. Now, they have a nice marketing name for their cooling system, Wind Force or whatever it is, with the dual fans, the 5 heat pipes, and all that nice stuff. The platform is well managed. One thing I used to ding Gigabyte on was their software, which was typically kind of buggy and all that sort of thing. They kind of got a handle on it now, and they've been pushing the whole AI management system and they've gotten it working now. So you have a couple of different profiles, like 5 to choose from. You have Gamer, which can overclock the CPU and the GPU, and you have Creator, which interestingly just overclocks the GPU. We did our tests on Gamer, so you can get some overclocking on each. There's Turbo, which is just unnecessarily loud and didn't really seem to make much of a difference. And then there's the usual low noise, low power kind of thing. So leaving on the Gamer profile, It performed better than I expected, to be honest, in games. I mean, this has more than enough horsepower to make your Adobe Premiere experience wonderful, working with multicam 4K footage, and it's overkill for most people for Photoshop, even if you have a 60 megapixel Sony A7 IV-R model, right? You know what I mean? But even when gaming, it did quite well. Now, it's pretty easy to see, and you can always see in the gaming footage in the top left corner, we have the thermals, the watts, all that sort of stuff there, so you can see the frame rate. And it's obviously that the BIOS, or the firmware on this, is constraining the CPU, and GPU is always constrained to a thermal maximum, so that's across the board. Usually it doesn't go above 90 degrees centigrade for the CPU. But that said, it really kept up the clock rates really well. So the balancing of the power between the CPU and the GPU is well done. The most I saw the CPU hitting in games was about 50 watts. And nominally this is a 45 watt processor, so that's fine. It's not madness territory, but the frame rates were quite good. And something like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, even playing at 4K resolution, it's fine. And since this is a 4K 60 hertz OLED panel, there's no point to overrunning that unless you're going to use an external monitor anyway. So as long as you can get 60 frames, that's fine. Now, something like Cyberpunk, it's still a pig as ever, and running it on ray tracing ultra, you know, upper 30s, running that at 2K resolution. So if you up DLSS from the default setting, which is auto, and put it on performance oriented, you can get to the upper 40s, which is actually okay for Cyberpunk. So not phenomenal there, but pretty good. If you're playing something like Apex Legends and all that sort of thing, you're certainly going to max it out. That said, because this is a 60 hertz display, those of you who are playing esports competitively or competitive first-person shooters online are going to want a faster display, no doubt. So this, again, is where it balances between creator and, well, content consumer too, with that 4K luscious OLED display, but not super duper high frame rates possible. The net effect of this, though, is also that here in toasty Dallas, our inside temperatures are 74 Fahrenheit. Sorry, I don't know the centigrade immediately what that is, but it's on the warmish side. And the thing did not get burning hot to the touch. The only two places that it does are far away from you. Top, dead center, bottom, rear, dead center, where it can get pretty hot. It typically was not that loud for a thin and light gaming / creator laptop. Now, it's no M1 MacBook Pro level of absolute chill, but compared to any Windows gaming laptop, this thing ran fairly quiet, so I was pretty impressed. Again, don't put it in turbo mode because it will just blast the fans, and to no really great advantage. So the power management is good here, the thermal management is good on this. And like any laptop geared towards creators or gamers and mobile workstation folks, it's very upgradable. Let's take a look at the internals. Take the bottom cover off, remove Torx T6 screws. Be mindful of two things. First off, these two black ones here, they're painted with black over the center of the screw head, but they are screws, you have to unscrew those. And there are some along the front edge here. Don't forget about those. Those are normal screws. But anyway, then it's pretty easy to pull it off. We start from the front and then work it off the hinge on the back, and it comes right off. Metal cover there. And here are the internals, a giant 99.9 watt-hour battery. And we have an M.2 SSD pre-installed, again PCIe Gen 4, so very fast. And then there's a second slot available symmetrically across on the other side of the battery, so you can put a second drive in, yay. And we have two RAM slots here. Ours came with 16 gigabytes. It's DDR4 3200 megahertz RAM in ours, but it can support DDR5 4800 megahertz RAM. Interesting, I don't know why we don't actually have that. Anyway, you can go up to 64 gigs in two slots. Two fans right here. Obviously, the heat sink area in reasonable size, so that's looking good. And lastly, we have a socketed Wi-Fi card. It's a good Intel 6E card, so you probably don't want to replace it unless something went wrong with it, but it is socketed, so you can do that. So easy access, easy to repaste if you want to do that sort of thing. Good stuff. Now, for other little bells and whistles, you have two 2-watt stereo speakers, and they are very loud. They don't have much bass, however, so I'd rather have more bass and less volume, but that's what it is. You have a white backlit keyboard. It's pretty comfortable to type on. It feels crispy. No perky RGB, so for those of you who want to bring the bling, this will not bring the bling. The trackpad, as usual, Microsoft Precision, is quite large. It looks a little odd in black to me. I thought silver might, go with the look a little bit better, but whatever, It's nice CNC aluminum chassis. It's okay looking as a laptop goes. You have Wi-Fi 6E, that's an Intel AX210 card, so you've got good connectivity with Bluetooth 5.2 on board as well. Also, it's nice to see a Windows Hello IR camera for facial recognition logins. I mean, you don't see in certainly gaming laptops all that often, and only some creator laptops. Now, when we talk about this as a mobile workstation stand-in, obviously one of the reasons it can be cheaper is the fact there's no ISV certification. They're not using Quadro GPUs, they're using GeForce. So this is more like consumer/content creator types. Maybe people who make YouTube videos for a living, for example. We don't need no darn Quadro. We're not doing CAD for a living or Blender for a living for our companies who insist on ISV certifications. So that's all fine. But you're not going to see a few things you might see on those kinds of things. There's no optional 5G, for example. So no WAN here like you would get with a Lenovo ThinkPad X1 Extreme or something like that. I can live with that, but you know you. So for battery, it's huge. It's 99.9 watt hour, the highest capacity you can have and still take it on an airplane. So that bodes well, right? By the way, a 230 watt charger, pretty par for the course. You know, you're looking at a very powerful machine with a 4K OLED display, a big power consumer. So if you're really frugal and set the brightness to 150 nits, which is bearable to look at, then, you know, you're looking at, with really light use, 7 hours. Realistically speaking, with mixed use, doing something more than streaming video and Twitter, you're going to probably see about 5.5 or 6 hours at 150 nits. Now, compared to the competition, with the 16-inch M1 MacBook Pro, I mean, I get it, but I don't get it if you're cross-shopping, because different OS, different platform. Do you like Final Cut or do you like Premiere, for example, if you're using it for those kinds of things? You can run Blender on both, of course, and all that sort of thing. But I still think that Aero's appeal to gamers, too. And there's no native x86 Windows gaming on the Mac, so not quite the same kind of comparison. But the Mac will run a lot cooler, that's for sure, because it's the coolest laptop on the planet, temperature-wise. And if you're looking at something like the MSI Stealth, I understand that similar, certainly offerings there. No 4K OLED for you there, though. And that's a little bit more expensive. And again, there's that Razer Blade that I talked about, and it's a premium brand with premium pricing. And it's a very good laptop, and it will net you more ports on board without having to use the hub. But then again, no 16 by 10 inch aspect ratio display and no 4K OLED, though they do offer some high resolution options, and obviously they offer a variety of other high refresh, like 2K resolution and full HD there. And lastly, there's Alienware, which surprisingly is one of the most affordable on the block these days, with the Alienware M15. What are we up to? R7 now. I'll be reviewing one of those soon. And that's actually the least expensive, starting around $2,200 for a sort of similar config, but there you're looking at, well, full HD, you're not going to get that 4K 16 by 10 aspect ratio OLED display. So it's good to have choices. And again, that's why I'm happy to see Gigabyte soldiering on with this, with the best of the Aeros that we've ever reviewed, and we've reviewed a few of them. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool and useful tech videos, and hit the notification bell so you know about them.